Red wears a broken heart before Descendants. Wicked Wonderland gives us any reason to ask who broke it. The symbol appears across her look like a small warning hidden inside all that confident color. At first, it seems like a clever extension of her identity. She is the daughter of a queen of hearts, after all. But a complete heart would have communicated certainty. This one is divided. It suggests that beneath Red's bold exterior, something remains unresolved. A choice may have repaired one part of her world while quietly separating another. That contradiction is the first clue in the box we are about to open. Welcome to the film box, where bright fantasy is never treated as empty decoration and a family adventure can still contain questions worth taking seriously. Every film is a box. We open it together. This time, the box is painted red, wrapped in Wonderland chaos, and sealed with the consequences of changing the past. It looks playful from a distance. Step closer, and the design becomes much stranger. Hearts are fractured, familiar relationships have shifted, happiness appears to have been restored, yet the world does not feel completely stable. Something is moving behind the colors. If you followed Red and Chloe through their previous adventure, you already know the choice that brought them here. They reached into history because the present felt unbearable. They believed that if they corrected one painful moment, they could prevent years of hurt from growing around it. That is an understandable fantasy. Most of us have imagined returning to one conversation, one mistake, or one decision and changing the outcome. But Wicked Wonderland begins from the uncomfortable possibility that fixing the moment you regret may also erase the path that produced everything else. That makes this more than another journey through a magical kingdom. It becomes a story about what happens after the wish comes true. Red wanted a kinder world. Chloe wanted to protect the people she loved. Their intentions were not selfish, and the result appears beautiful. Yet Wonderland has never been a place where appearances can be trusted. Its rules bend. Its logic circles back on itself. Even its happiest images can conceal a trap. By bringing the consequences of time travel into that environment, the film creates a world where emotional uncertainty becomes physical space. The broken art emblem gives us a way through that space. We will follow it without rushing toward an answer. We will look at how the film uses costume, color, music, movement, and shifting relationships to separate identity from inheritance. Red may carry her mother's symbol, but that does not mean she must repeat her mother's story. Pink enters a world already shaped by choices she did not make. Chloe carries the pressure of being good so gracefully that people can forget goodness also has a cost. Around them, heroes and villains wear labels that seem clear until fear, jealousy, loyalty, and resentment begin pulling those labels apart. That tension matters because the Descendants franchise has always asked whether children are bound by the reputations of their parents. Wicked Wonderland takes that familiar question and turns it sideways. What if the parent changes? What happens to the child whose identity formed in response to the person that parent used to be? If the conflict disappears, does the wound disappear with it? Or does the child simply lose the explanation she once had for feeling hurt? A repaired family can still contain memories that no longer match reality. A happy ending can still leave someone emotionally homeless. We are not going to reduce this film to a sequence of songs, costumes, magical confrontations, and recognizable family names. Those elements are part of its appeal, but they are also tools. A burst of color can establish a character's place in the group. A musical number can turn an internal conflict into movement. A playful design can hide a warning in plain sight. Even the contrast between red and pink invites a question. Are they simply two variations of the same royal identity, or do their colors reveal two completely different responses to belonging? We will also be honest about where the film earns its emotion and where its crowded world struggles to give every idea enough room. A growing franchise carries its own kind of pressure. It must welcome new characters, reward returning fans, continue unfinished stories, introduce fresh music, and leave another door available for the future. When all those demands compete inside one adventure, some compartments open beautifully while others barely have time to reveal what they contain. The goal here is not to excuse those weaknesses or attack them, it is to understand the mechanism behind them. My personal rating will remain closed away until the verdict. Before we reach it, we need to test the film on its own terms. Does the Wonderland setting deepen the story, or is it only a vivid new backdrop? Does Red's growth feel like a genuine continuation, or does the plot move her wherever the franchise needs her? Do the new relationships create emotional weight or simply expand the cast? Most importantly, does the film understand the idea hidden inside its own broken heart symbol? Keep that divided heart in mind. One side represents the life Red remembers, the other represents the world her choice helped create. Between them is a narrow break that cannot be covered by brighter costumes or louder music. That space is where regret, love, responsibility, and identity begin pressing against one another. It is also where Wicked Wonderland finds its most compelling possibility. Because the real danger may not be that Red changed the past. It may be that she succeeded, received the happy ending she thought she wanted, and still cannot recognize every part of the life waiting for her on the other side. And once you notice that possibility, the film's brightest promise becomes its sharpest question. The sharpest hook in Descendants, Wicked Wonderland, is not that Red's victory creates a new enemy. It is that her victory creates a new version of Red. The world around her remembers relationships, choices, and emotional histories that she never experienced. Everyone else appears to understand where she belongs, why she is still carrying memories from a reality that technically no longer exists. She has achieved the impossible and changed her family for the better, but now she must live inside a happy ending, written for someone slightly different from herself. That is a far more interesting danger than another magical threat. A villain can be confronted, a kingdom can be rescued, a stolen object can be recovered. But how do you fight the feeling that your own life has continued without you? How do you accept love from someone when your memories insist that the relationship used to be painful? And what happens when the people around you expect gratitude because they cannot remember the cost you paid to create their happiness? Wicked Wonderland places Red at the center of that emotional contradiction. She is surrounded by proof that her decision worked, yet every improvement also reminds her that she is the only person who understands what was replaced. The world sees a successful princess returning to a loving home. Red feels the invisible weight of two timelines. One lives around her, the other survives inside her. Neither is completely false, but they cannot occupy the same emotional space without creating pressure. This is why Wonderland is the perfect destination for the story. Auradon represents order. Its schools, royal families, ceremonies, and expectations are all designed to tell who we are supposed to become. Wonderland operates differently. It turns certainty into confusion. Direction becomes unreliable. Identity becomes performance. Logic can change depending on who holds power. In a place like that, Red cannot simply point to the world and ask it to confirm what is real. The world points back and asks her the same question. The film's colorful surface makes this tension easy to underestimate. There are energetic musical sequences, elaborate costumes, playful descendants of familiar characters, and the kind of visual spectacle the franchise knows how to deliver. Yet beneath that movement is a surprisingly lonely idea. Red saved her mother from becoming the person she remembered, but nobody can return the part of Red that was shaped by surviving that mother. The pain may have been removed from history, but its influence remains inside the one person who remembers it. Put those details together, and the divided heart begins to feel less like decoration. One half belongs to Red Soul reality, where love was tangled with fear and rebellion became protection. The other belongs to this altered present, where affection is easier but belonging is more complicated. She cannot throw away the first half without denying her own experience. She cannot reject the second without refusing the happiness she fought to create. The real question is not which world deserves to survive. It is whether Red can become whole while carrying both. That question also changes how we see the people entering her life. New connections may look like rewards, but they can also feel like evidence that history has moved beyond her control. Someone can note it as family while remaining emotionally unfamiliar to her. Someone else can understand the confusion while still carrying motives she cannot read. Even Chloe, the person who shared the original journey, experiences the altered world through a different emotional lens. They change history together, but they do not necessarily carry the consequences in the same way. And that difference is dangerous. Friendship often feels strongest when two people survive the same event, but surviving the same event does not guarantee that they give it the same meaning. Red may see that choice as a permanent responsibility. Chloe may see it as a problem they successfully solved. Neither perspective has to be cruel or dishonest. The distance begins when each person assumes the other feels exactly the same. Wonderland does not need to invent that fracture, it only needs to widen it. The new threat waiting for them understands the cost of their decision from another direction. Red and Chloe experienced their intervention as an act of rescue. Someone else experienced the new timeline as a theft. That does not automatically justify what follows, but it prevents the conflict from becoming a simple contest between good intentions and senseless cruelty. Every correction creates a beneficiary. It can also create someone who lost a future, a relationship, or a place in the world. The heroes celebrated what they saved because they never stopped to count what vanished. That is the mechanism pulling us forward. A previous happy ending becomes the cause of the next crisis. The film does not need to declare that Red and Chloe were wrong to save the people they loved. Instead, it asks whether good intentions release someone from responsibility for consequences they could not predict. If changing history produces both kindness and resentment, then success and failure can exist inside the same choice. The heart does not divide because one side is good and the other is evil. It divides because both sides contain something true. So, the most gripping promise of Wicked Wonderland is not discovering who wants revenge or watching another kingdom fall into danger. It is watching Red confront a world that gives her almost everything she wanted and then asks whether she is willing to become the person that world expects. She can protect the new timeline. She can search for a way back. She can try to combine two incompatible versions of herself. But every path demands that she surrenders something. That gives the adventure its real countdown. Before any magical object changes hands, and before Wonderland reveals the full scale of its instability, Red is already running out of room between who she remembers being and who everyone believes she has always been. The new villain may threaten the kingdom, but the altered timeline threatens the story Red tells herself about her own life. And if that story breaks, saving Wonderland will be the easier problem. To understand why Wicked Wonderland feels both connected to the rise of Red and noticeably different from it, start with the people controlling the transition. Disney's official production materials identify Kimi Gatewood as director and co-executive producer, working from a screenplay by Tamara Chestnut, Dan Frey, and Drew Summer. Frey and Summer also worked on The Rise of Red, while executive producers Suzanne Todd and Gary Marsh returned for this installment. That combination matters. The screenplay keeps writers who understand the altered timeline, while the director brings a new eye to the world created by it. You can feel that balance in the way the film handles continuity. The story does not waste much time rebuilding the rules of Red and Chloe's friendship or explaining every consequence left by the previous adventure. It assumes that emotional foundation is already inside the box. Gatewood can therefore concentrate on rearranging the pieces. Familiar characters enter spaces that behave differently. New characters arrive with relationships already established by the rewritten past. Wonderland feels less like another kingdom added to a map and more like a machine designed to expose instability. The directing choice becomes especially visible whenever a crowded scene could have turned into noise. Wicked Wonderland has returning leads, new descendants, royal parents, comic side characters, magical creatures, and several competing emotional conflicts. Gatewood frequently organizes that material through reactions rather than explanations. A character entering the frame may immediately reveal who feels threatened, who feels overlooked, and who is pretending to remain calm. The visual energy stays playful, but the groupings inside the frame tell you where the pressure is building. That is important for Red's divided identity. If the film stopped repeatedly to explain what she remembers and how this reality differs, the premise would become heavy. Instead, here uncertainty often exists beside the confidence of everyone around her. The production turns contrast into information. One person treats a relationship as completely natural. Red hesitates for a fraction longer. That small pause carries the weight of an entire missing history. The filmmaking lets the older timeline feel normal to the world and abnormal to the person trapped between its versions. The second production fact explains why so much character information arrives through movement. Disney announced Emmy-winning choreographer Emilio Dosal as the person responsible for bringing the film's new music and dance sequences to life. The studio also promoted Wicked Wonderland as having more new original songs than any earlier Descendants movie that could easily have created a soundtrack fighting against the story. Instead, the strongest numbers function like emotional arguments that the characters cannot contain in ordinary conversation. Watch how the choreography assigns power. Characters do not simply stand in attractive formations and perform toward the camera. They advance, retreat, surround one another, break into separate groups, and attempt to control the center. During the chessboard sequence, the setting turns those movements into a visible contest. Every position suggests strategy. Every shift in alignment changes who appears protected and who appears exposed. The dance floor becomes a board on which trust, rivalry, and temptation can be moved like pieces. This gives the musical structure a specific dramatic purpose. A song about perfection can reveal how exhausting perfection has become. A villain anthem can transform private resentment into public authority. A good number can create unity while showing which character still stands slightly outside it. The choreography is most effective when it exposes the difference between what someone claims to feel and what their body communicates. A confident lyric may be accompanied by defensive movement. A celebration can place one person at the edge. The film keeps turning performance into evidence. The third fact concerns the environment surrounding that moment. In an interview about the film's hidden details, Gatewood explained that Wonderland sets were deliberately filled with references to the broader Alice tradition. The White Rabbit's cottage includes small carrot motifs and rabbit portraits. Teacups, mushrooms, Cheshire cat imagery, and top hats appear throughout the world. Gatewood even pointed to a chandelier constructed around top hat shapes, while the Smee brothers were designed to echo some of the paired comic energy associated with Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Those details do more than reward someone who pauses the screen. They prevent Wonderland from feeling like a generic fantasy set covered in random color. Each area appears to have grown from the habits of the person connected to it. The White Rabbit's home does not merely contain rabbit-shaped decoration. It suggests a residence so consumed by identity that the entire house reflects it back. The top hat imagery spreads Maddox's family legacy into the architecture. His influence is not limited to his costume or his actions. It appears to have entered the bones of the kingdom. That choice changes the way you read the larger spaces. Wonderland is filled with inherited symbols, just as its young characters are surrounded by inherited names. The descendants carry the reputations of famous parents, while the rooms carry the visual remains of older stories. A mushroom, teacup, hook, candle, or hat can immediately tell you which legacy has entered the frame. The production design creates a network of family histories before the screenplay has to explain them. The world itself keeps identifying everyone by origin, but the most revealing design work appears on the characters. Kylie Cantrall confirmed that Red's heartbreak emblem was placed repeatedly throughout her wardrobe. Leonardo Nam also explained that Maddox retains touches of the green associated with his earlier appearance, while purple and maroon were introduced to reflect more volatile emotional shades. These costume decisions form the fourth production fact, and together they show two different methods of carrying the past. Red repeats one emblem across changing looks. Her clothes evolve, but the divided heart remains stable. That makes the symbol feel like a personal signature she has chosen to keep even after her circumstances change. Maddox's palette works in the opposite direction. The earlier green survives, but darker and richer colors gather around it. His identity has not been replaced. It has accumulated emotional pressure. Red carries a fracture as a recognizable brand. Maddox carries transformation as contamination spreading through an older design. The costumes therefore prepare the conflict before either character explains a position. Red's repeated heart tells us that she remains attached to the emotional history of her former life. Maddox's expanding palette tells us that the new timeline has changed how his history feels. One design preserves a wound, the other visualizes resentment growing around a memory. When they occupy the same scene, the color relationship already places two consequences of time travel opposite each other. A fifth production decision gives the movie a different kind of inherited memory. Brandy and Paolo Montalban return as Cinderella and King Charming, continuing roles they first played together in the 1997 television adaptation of Cinderella and revisited in The Rise of Red. Montalban described their reunion as feeling natural because of the trust created by that long professional connection. Wicked Wonderland uses that history without pausing to turn it into a lesson about Disney television. Their presence creates emotional recognition before the plot asks them to do anything. You are not only watching Chloe's parents, you are watching performers whose earlier version of romantic possibility has survived across decades and entered a franchise about the next generation. That makes Cinderella and Charming feel unusually complete in a world where many parents exist mainly as references. Their relationship carries a memory outside the story, while Red's problem comes from carrying a memory no one inside the story shares. That contrast is one of the production's smartest hidden mechanisms. Randy and Montalban bring continuity that feels warm and secure. Red experiences continuity as something unstable and private. The casting allows one family history to assure you, while the altered timeline makes another family history impossible to trust. The film does not have to explain that difference. It lets performance history and character history occupy the same frame. Put these five choices together, and Wicked Wonderland's construction becomes visible. Returning writers protect the previous story's foundation. A new director reorganizes its energy. Choreography turns emotion into position. Production design makes inheritance part of the architecture. Costumes transform memory into color, while legacy casting gives one family a sense of permanence that Red cannot access. The result is a film built around clues you often feel before you consciously recognize them. The Broken Heart was never working alone. It belongs to an entire visual system in which every room, color, formation, and familiar face asks the same question from a different direction. When history changes, what remains attached to the person who remembers? To answer that, we now need to open the box itself and establish exactly what kind of film is hiding beneath all this Wonderland spectacle. So, what exactly is inside this box? Descendants Wicked Wonderland is a 2026 musical fantasy adventure directed by Kimi Gatewood. It is the fifth live action film in the Descendants franchise and a direct continuation of Descendants The Rise of Red. Kylie Cantrall returns as Red, with Malia Baker as Chloe Charming and Leonardo Nam as Maddox Hatter. The central group expands through Liamani Segura as Pink, Brendan Tremblay as Max Hatter, Alexandru Bird as Luis Madrigal, and Chiara Romero as Hazel Hook. Rita Ora returns as the Queen of Hearts, Brandy as Cinderella, Paolo Montalban as King Charming, and Awkwafina provides the voice of Chessy the cat. That list immediately reveals the film's enormous balancing act. Wicked Wonderland must continue Red and Chloe's unfinished time travel story, introduce an altered family dynamic, develop a new villain, welcome another generation of descendants, revisit established parents, expand the geography of the franchise, and deliver enough songs to remain unmistakably Descendants. It wants to be a sequel, a Wonderland remix, a family story, a musical, and the beginning of another team. My spoiler-free verdict is that it succeeds most when it slows down long enough to let those purposes overlap. The emotional core is sincere, the visual identity is confident, and several musical sequences understand exactly how to turn character tension into spectacle. Kylie Cantrall remains a strong center because she can make Red appear fearless, while allowing uncertainty to flicker underneath. The film becomes less convincing whenever its crowded plot pushes an emotional turn into place before that turn has fully developed. This is not a failure of imagination. If anything, Wicked Wonderland often has more imagination than it has space. New characters enter with designs, family histories, abilities, and possible conflicts that could support entire episodes or separate adventures. Some make an immediate impression. Others feel like intriguing boxes of film places on the table but never gets enough time to open. That imbalance gives the movie momentum. Yet it can also leave you wishing the adventure would pause and listen to its own best ideas. The film exists because the rise of Red deliberately ended with unfinished consequences. Red and Chloe altered the event that shaped the Queen of Hearts, creating a kinder present and saving Cinderella from the fate they feared. That conclusion offered emotional relief, but the warning attached to it was clear. History is not a single damaged object that can be repaired without touching anything around it. Wicked Wonderland is the franchise following that warning into the next compartment. Its central inspiration comes from combining the Descendants' question of inherited identity with the unstable logic of Wonderland. The franchise has always mixed famous Disney stories, asking what happens when the children of heroes and villains inherit names before they have earned identities of their own. Wonderland makes that problem more unpredictable because it is already a world built around transformation, contradiction, riddles, shifting size, uncertain direction, and authority that can become absurd. At its heart, this is a story about the difference between receiving a family and feeling that you belong to it. Red returns to a reality that appears kinder, but kindness alone cannot manufacture shared memories. Pink may belong to Red by blood and by the history of the altered timeline, yet emotional closeness cannot be inserted into Red's mind as easily as a new fact. The film understands that learning someone is family and recognizing that person is family are not the same experience. It is also a story about becoming more than the role other people find convenient. Red has spent much of her life resisting the villainous identity attached to her mother. Chloe carries a different burden. She has been treated as the dependable princess, the good friend, and the person expected to choose the responsible path. Those labels appear positive, but positive expectations can still become restrictive. A perfect image leaves no room for anger, confusion, jealousy, or exhaustion without making the person feel that she has failed. Around them, Maddox represents another consequence of assigning someone a fixed role. In the earlier timeline, Red knew him as an ally and mentor. In this new reality, the emotional path leading to that relationship has changed. The film uses him to ask whether villainy begins inside a person or grows from the meaning that person gives to loss. It does not require you to approve of his choices. It only asks you to notice the mechanism that turned a familiar figure into a threat. This makes Wicked Wonderland more emotionally ambitious than its bright surface first suggests. The film is still designed as accessible family entertainment. Its conflicts are expressed through magic, songs, humor, colorful confrontations, and recognizable fairy tale families. But underneath that accessibility is a concern many people understand. You can get what you wanted and still feel unsettled. You can love someone and still resent the version of yourself that relationship requires. You can improve your life without knowing how to mourn the person you had to become before it improved. If you enjoy the Descendants franchise for its music, costumes, character pairings, and playful remixes of Disney history, this film gives you plenty to explore. It rewards attention to background design and small visual clues. It also works best if you remember the rise of Red, because the emotional weight depends on understanding what Red and Chloe changed. Someone entering the franchise here can follow the immediate mission, but several relationships will feel thinner without that earlier context. If you prefer tightly focused fantasy stories with only a few major characters, the expanding ensemble may test your patience. Wicked Wonderland frequently introduces a fascinating personality and then moves before that personality can deepen. The film is more interested in creating future possibilities than closing every door it opens. That can feel exciting if you enjoy franchise building. It can feel incomplete if you want every emotional thread resolved inside a single adventure. But that is still a reason to care even if you are not deeply invested in the wider franchise. Red's problem is simple enough to cross the boundary of fantasy. She has changed the environment that hurt her, but changing the environment does not immediately change the person who survived it. The world tells her that everything is better. Her divided heart tells us that better is not the same as healed. That is the story hidden beneath the songs and spectacle. Wicked Wonderland is not really asking whether Red can defeat another villain. It is asking whether she can accept responsibility for a new reality without erasing the truth of the old one. The adventure begins when those two histories can no longer remain politely separated. And before we follow the story into that conflict, we need to return to the first minutes and examine the feeling the film creates before its larger machinery becomes visible. The opening creates its first feeling through an act of concealment. Red and Chloe have returned from the past, carrying Maddox Hatter's magical pocket watch, the object that allowed them to rewrite history. Instead of celebrating with it or trying to use it again, they hide it inside Wonderland's secret royal vault. The choice immediately gives the beginning a nervous energy. Their adventure may be over, but they are still handling the evidence. That is a smart place to resume the story. A weaker sequel might have opened after enough time had passed for everyone to settle into the new reality. Wicked Wonderland refuses that distance. It begins close enough to the previous ending that the emotional dust has not fallen. Red and Chloe know they achieved their goal. Yet the pocket watch must be locked away, as if success itself has become dangerous. The object is no longer presented as a solution. It feels like a question they do not want asked. My first reaction to this opening was not excitement or fear, it was suspicion. The film presents a hidden vault, a supposedly secure plan, and two characters who seem determined to place their impossible choice behind a closed door. In fantasy stories, locking away a powerful object rarely removes its influence, it simply changes the form of the threat. The watch disappears from sight, but every detail in the new timeline exists because it was used. Then the film makes a sharp tonal turn. The next day is brighter, louder, and organized around the image of royal perfection. The opening musical energy insists that Red and Chloe now occupy the lives of successful princesses. Their mothers are safe. The Queen of Hearts is kind. The world appears ready to reward them for completing their journey. Even the title of the early number, Perfect Princess, tells you what emotional position the characters are expected to accept. On the surface, the sequence delivers exactly what you expect from Descendants. Strong colors, fast movement, confident styling, young characters entering with instantly recognizable identities, parents celebrating their children. Algorithm designed to make the altered world feel exciting rather than frightening. The film knows that this franchise cannot begin like a quiet psychological drama, so it places its uncertainty inside a musical celebration. That is what makes the number more interesting than a simple welcome back performance. Perfection sounds like praise, but it can also become an instruction. Red is expected to fit the role of a princess in the family she repaired. Chloe is expected to remain the dependable daughter of Cinderella. Both are surrounded by approval, yet approval becomes uncomfortable when it leaves no space for confusion. The song announces that everything is wonderful before either girl has decided whether that statement feels true. Red's discovery of pink intensifies that discomfort. The altered timeline has not only changed her mother's personality, it has given Red a younger sister with a complete history of loving her. Pink's warmth is immediate and genuine. Nothing about her behavior suggests deception. That makes Red's distance more emotionally complicated. It would be easier if Pink were hostile or suspicious. Instead, she offers the kind of affection Red should want, and Red cannot honestly return it with the same certainty. The opening does not need a threatening spell to make that situation strange. Imagine meeting someone who remembers years of private moments with you. They know your habits, your childhood, and the version of you who existed beside them. You understand intellectually that those memories belong to the life you created, but you cannot feel them. Pink sees her sister, Red sees evidence of a childhood she never lived. That was the detail that made the first 10 minutes difficult to look away from. The film's premise promises a dangerous journey through Wonderland, but the opening conflict is much quieter. Red has won and still feels displaced. The world is not rejecting her, it is welcoming her into a place she cannot recognize. That reversal gives the altered timeline emotional weight before the larger threat fully emerges. Chloe experiences the new present differently. Her mother survived and her family appears secure, but Chloe also carries memories of meeting a younger Cinderella whose outlook does not completely match the woman in front of her. The opening uses that difference to disturb Chloe's certainty about the role she has inherited. She has built part of her identity around her mother's goodness and wisdom. Discovering that a person changes across time should be obvious, yet seeing two versions makes the contradiction impossible to ignore. This creates a useful comparison between the girls. Red struggles because the new reality gives her more family than she remembers. Chloe struggles because the past revealed more complexity than her idealized image allowed. One is asked to accept a relationship that appeared through time travel. The other must accept that a familiar relationship contains a person she never completely understood. The film's early minutes place both problems under the cheerful label of perfection. The atmosphere of Wonderland reinforces that contradiction. The production is vivid, floral, crowded, and intentionally whimsical. Nothing sits quietly in the background. Shapes bend toward character themes. Colors compete for attention. Ordinary household objects carry exaggerated personality. The world feels welcoming, but it never feels neutral. Every corner seems capable of producing a new rule or revealing another consequence. That is a stronger opening atmosphere than the premise initially made me expect. A story about rescuing the Queen of Hearts from a new villain could have started with immediate danger and explained the emotional consequences later. Wicked Wonderland begins with the emotional instability first. It shows why this world matters to Red before placing it under threat. That choice makes the eventual mission personal rather than merely royal. The opening is not flawless. It moves very quickly through information that could have supported longer scenes. Pink's existence, Chloe's changed perspective, Bed's new royal image, Maddox's altered position, and the larger state of Wonderland all need space. The film sometimes treats recognition as development. You understand that something has changed, but you are not always allowed to remain with the characters long enough to feel the full impact. The musical format both helps and creates the problem. A song can introduce relationships, attitudes, and visual identities within minutes. It keeps the beginning energetic and prevents the timeline explanation from becoming a long conversation. But speed also smooths over the awkward silence that should exist when Red realizes how much of her new life is missing from her memory. The film communicates the idea clearly, then moves before its emotional discomfort can fully settle. Still, the momentum works because the opening keeps one question alive. If this reality is as perfect as everyone claims, why does Red look as though she is standing inside someone else's celebration? Her heartbreak emblem becomes especially effective here. The symbol remains divided while the world around her insists that the damage has been repaired. Costume and story are already disagreeing. That disagreement is the opening's real hook. The vault says the past has been contained. The song says the present is perfect. Pink says Red has always belonged beside her. Red's hesitation says none of those statements is complete. Four pieces of evidence point toward four different versions of the truth, and the film trusts you to fill the gap before it explains the mechanism. By the end of those first minutes, I was not invested because Wonderland looked beautiful or because another magical conflict was approaching. I was invested because the film had created a version of happiness that felt emotionally unstable. Red has no obvious reason to reject it. Yet accepting it would require her to behave as though memories can be rewritten as easily as history. The opening therefore accomplishes something essential. It makes perfection feel suspicious. It takes the bright confidence of the Descendants style and places a crack beneath it. Once that crack becomes visible, every camera angle, color shift, edit, and musical formation begins carrying more information than the surface first reveals. And that choice opens the next compartment, the filmmaking techniques that turn Red's invisible displacement into something you can actually see. Once perfection begins to feel suspicious, the camera has to show the difference between a beautiful world and a secure one. Wicked Wonderland approaches that challenge through visual excess. The frame is rarely empty. Flowers, curved architecture, oversized props, patterned floors, hanging objects, and character specific symbols compete for attention. That density is not merely decorative. It makes Wonderland feel like a place where the environment is always offering more information than a character can process. The film frequently establishes a location with the right composition, allowing you to understand its dominant shape before moving closer to the people inside it. Wonderland's rooms are not designed like ordinary rectangles. Lines curve, objects lean. Entrances appear slightly theatrical, and center features often resemble icons associated with the character controlling the space. White framing lets those relationships remain visible. The character does not simply stand inside a room. The room appears to describe the character. That method becomes especially effective in the White Rabbit's cottage. Small carrots, portraits, clocks, and rabbit imagery create a space shaped by repetition. The frame communicates obsession through accumulation. No single object carries the entire idea. The meaning comes from seeing variations of the same identity appear everywhere. Wonderland turns personality into architecture, and the camera gives those details enough room to remain legible. Maddox's spaces use a different visual mechanism. Hats, mechanical shapes, darker colors, and vertical structures create the sense of a mind attempting to impose order on emotional chaos. The production design contains playful curves, but the framing often looks more controlled. Maddox tends to occupy positions that allow him to command the image, while other characters become arranged around his visual authority. He does not need to appear physically enormous. The composition enlarges his influence. Color performs another layer of storytelling. Red, pink, and Chloe carry identities so strongly associated with color that placing them together becomes a form of emotional blocking. Red's palette is forceful and warm. Pink's is softer and more open. Chloe's blue suggests calm control. When the three share a frame, the colors create an immediate map of their differences before anyone speaks. Red pulls the eye. Pink brightens the space around her. Chloe appears visually cooler and more contained. The film uses saturation carefully. Its tearful sequences allow colors to appear clean, separated, and almost celebratory. As trust becomes less stable, the same colors begin competing rather than harmonizing. Purple, maroon, green, and deeper shadows push into the frame. The world does not suddenly abandon its family fantasy appearance. Instead, the palette becomes crowded. That is the right visual choice for a story in which danger grows from an altered version of happiness rather than invading from an entirely separate world. Lighting supports that shift. Early royal scenes favor bright, even illumination that makes costumes and faces immediately readable. This is the light of presentation. Everyone can be seen clearly because everyone is performing a recognizable role. The image feels polished, almost as if the kingdom itself is preparing a portrait of the perfect families it wants to display. Wonderland's more uncertain spaces introduce stronger color contrast and shaped pools of light. Faces may remain readable, but the background becomes less predictable. An entrance can glow while the path around it falls into deeper color. A character can stand inside a vivid environment without feeling completely connected to it. That separation is especially useful for Red. The frame may surround her with the colors of home while lighting her as someone still searching for a position inside them. The musical numbers reveal the film's camera strategy most clearly. Wide shots establish the full choreography and show who controls the formation. Medium shots then isolate smaller groups, allowing relationships to emerge inside a larger pattern. Close-ups arrive when a performance shifts from public confidence to private emotion. The camera therefore moves through three levels of meaning: the kingdom's image, the group's power structure, and the individual's hidden reaction. Perfect princess depends on that movement. The wider compositions present a united royal celebration. The choreography is symmetrical enough to suggest that everyone knows where they belong. Closer framing quietly complicates the image. Confidence becomes pressure. Smiles become performances that must be maintained. The technique allows the musical number to function in two directions at once. It can remain energetic for the surface story while revealing emotional resistance underneath. The chessboard sequence uses geometry more aggressively. The floor already divides space into control units, so every movement becomes a decision about territory. High and wide perspectives clarify the board, while lower angles turn individual figures into larger threats. Cuts between the complete formation and isolated reactions create tension between strategy and emotion. You understand the role of the space, then see how fear or mistrust disrupts the people trying to follow it. Camera movement also separates confidence from uncertainty. When a character controls a musical moment, the camera often travels with that person, allowing their forward motion to feel continuous. When control weakens, editing interrupts that flow. Reaction shots, opposing angles, and quicker changes in skill break the visual confidence. The image stops moving as one unit because the group has stopped thinking as one unit. The editing rhythm is fast, but it is not constant. Performance sequences accelerate through changes in formation, then briefly hold when a character's expression needs to alter the meaning of what came before. Those small pauses matter. Without them, the songs would communicate only energy. By allowing a look or hesitation to remain for an extra beat, the edit creates a compartment for doubt inside the spectacle. At times, the cutting becomes too eager. Wicked Wonderland has many performers to acknowledge, and a sequence may jump toward the next character before the current emotional idea has fully landed. The result keeps the film lively, but it occasionally weakens intimacy. A longer close up could have allowed uncertainty to deepen. A held too short could have made the distance between friends more uncomfortable. The movie sometimes chooses momentum when stillness would have produced greater weight. The hedge maze offers the opposite visual logic from the chessboard. The board is open, measurable, and governed by visible positions. The maze conceals information. Walls interrupt sight lines. Paths change the relationship between foreground and background. Characters can be physically close while visually separated. The production design turns emotional misunderstanding into block space. You cannot see the complete route, just as the characters cannot see the complete consequences of their choices. That contrast between the board and the maze is one of the film's strongest technical ideas. The chessboard suggests that conflict can be solved through strategy. The maze reveals that emotional problems are not always arranged into fair moves. One environment asks the characters to calculate, the other forces them to confront what they cannot map. The visual texture helps those spaces feel distinct. The film allows set dressing to remain specific rather than blending every surface into generic fantasy. Fabric, painted patterns, carved shapes, plants, reflective details, and mechanical objects each contribute a different tactile quality. Digital magic enhances the action, but the physical environment gives performers objects and levels to move around. Choreography feels more connected to place because bodies are constantly responding to stairs, platforms, paths, and obstacles. Framing repeatedly returns to division. Doorways place characters on opposite sides. Set pieces split groups into visual camps. Foreground objects partially block someone who feels excluded. Symmetrical compositions begin stable and then lose their balance when one person moves away from the expected position. The divided heart is therefore echoed by the entire visual grammar. The symbol appears on red, but separation appears everywhere. None of these techniques needs to announce the theme. The camera simply shows order becoming unstable. Color moves from harmony to competition. Editing moves from collective rhythm to interruption. Lighting separates public appearance from private uncertainty. Production design transforms family legacy into rooms, boards, and pathways. That is how Wicked Wonderland makes an invisible timeline visible. History cannot be photographed directly, but its pressure can be expressed through where a character stands, what color surrounds her, how long the camera remains, and whether the frame allows two people to occupy the same space without a barrier between them. With that mechanism now visible, we can follow the causal paths of the story and see which choice first turns emotional distance into open conflict. The story begins with Red wanting something that sounds simple but is emotionally impossible. She wants the new timeline to remain safe without allowing it to redefine her. Hiding the pocket watch appears to solve the practical half of that problem. If no one can reach it, history cannot be changed again, but the watch has already completed its work. Locking away the mechanism does not remove the relationships, memories, and resentments created by its use. This is our first causal connection. Red and Chloe treat the pocket watch as the danger because it is the object they can physically control. The real danger is knowledge. They remember the previous timeline. Young Maddox saw them using the watch in the past. Pink remembers a childhood with Red that Red never experienced. Every major conflict begins because different characters possess different versions of history. The older present initially looks like proof that Red and Chloe made the correct choice. Bridget is now a kinder Queen of Hearts, while Cinderella survived the event that once placed her in danger. Red no longer has to fight against the cruel reputation of her family, and Chloe can return to the mother she wanted to protect. Their central objective has been achieved. Then the new compartments begin opening. Red discovers that she has a younger sister named Pink. Pink approaches her with the confidence of someone continuing a lifelong bond, while Red can only imitate recognition. The change is positive in any objective sense. Red has received a loving sibling and a gentler home, yet the film understands that emotional intimacy cannot be created retroactively for the person who remembers another reality. Pink therefore becomes more than a new family member. She is living evidence that Red's choice reached far beyond one school dance in the past. Every memory Pink carries was produced by a chain of events Red never witnessed. Red's discomfort is not a rejection of Pink's kindness. It is fear of how much control she surrendered when she changed history. Maddox Hatter represents the darker side of the same chain. In the original present, Red knew Maddox as someone she could trust. But when Red and Chloe traveled into the past, a younger Maddox witnessed their return through the pocket watch. That moment changed his direction. The object became an obsession because it proved that history could be entered and controlled. This detail transforms Maddox from a random replacement villain into a consequence with a face. Red did not intentionally corrupt him. She may not even have realized he had seen anything. But intention does not interrupt cause and effect. One secret act gave Maddox knowledge he was never supposed to possess, and that knowledge reorganized his life. His pursuit of the watch eventually destroyed his place in Wonderland. Bridget banished Maddox and his son Max to the Isle of the Lost. After the barrier surrounding the isle was removed, Maddox gained a path back, but freedom did not restore what he believed had been taken from him. He returned carrying years of resentment and a fixed belief that the pocket watch could correct his loss. Maddox's first major move is to capture Bridget and seize control of Wonderland through her magical cards. On the surface, this is the familiar action of a villain taking a kingdom. Underneath it is a reversal of Red's earlier decision. Red used power secretly because she believed she understood what needed to change. Maddox now uses power openly for the same reason. Both act from emotional certainty. The difference lies in what they are willing to do to everyone around them. Bridget manages to send Red a magical warning, forcing Red to return to the home she still does not emotionally recognize. Her immediate want becomes rescuing her mother. But that rescue is tied to a second responsibility. Maddox cannot be allowed to reach the royal vault and recover the pocket watch. Red must protect a person and protect the secret that placed that person in danger. Chloe joins her, as does Pink. The mission also gathers Max Hatter, Louis Madrigal, Hazel Hook, Robbie Hood, Felix Facilier, and the Smee brothers. Their parents' names identify them before their actions can. Some come from heroic traditions, others carry villainous reputations. Max faces the hardest judgment because his father is the person holding Wonderland. The group initially treats those labels as useful evidence. A heroic parent suggests trust, a villainous parent suggests risk. Red should understand better than anyone why this logic fails, but pressure makes familiar categories tempting. When time is short, judging someone by inheritance feels faster than discovering who that person has chosen to become. That choice quietly repeats the franchise's oldest mistake. The adults once confined children because of what their parents had done. The new generation believes it has moved beyond that system, yet suspicion returns the moment danger becomes personal. The names have changed, But the mechanism survives. Wonderland then begins testing the group through a series of magical obstacles. The important point is not the exact order of every creature, trap, or strange location. Each challenge forces the team to act with incomplete information. Their survival depends less on individual strength than on whether they trust another person's plan quickly enough to follow it. This makes the Enchanted Chess game a decisive turning point. The board demands strategy, positioning, and sacrifice. Red forms a plan involving Chloe and a dangerous flower, expecting Chloe to use her dagger as part of the move. Chloe interprets the situation differently. From her position, it appears that Red has treated her as expendable bait. The misunderstanding is more important than the physical danger. Red assumes Chloe will understand the plan because of everything they have survived together. Chloe assumes Red understands how much pressure she has been hiding. Neither explains enough. Their friendship does not fracture because one of them suddenly becomes cruel. It fractures because confidence has replaced communication. That is exactly what happened with the timeline. Red and Chloe made an enormous decision because they trusted their own understanding of the consequences. Now Red makes a smaller tactical decision through the same habit. She believes a good objective and a workable mechanism should be enough. Chloe experiences the emotional cost that Red failed to calculate. Chessy recognizes the weakness and pushes against it. As the daughter of the Cheshire Cat, she does not need to overpower the group directly. Her advantage comes from uncertainty. She can make a suspicion feel like confirmation and encourage each person to interpret incomplete evidence in the most painful way possible. This is why Chessy fits the story's mechanism so well. Maddox wants to control history. Chessy controls interpretation, he attacks the official structure of Wonderland, while she attacks the private stories the characters tell about one another. A friendship can survive an obstacle. It becomes more vulnerable when each person believes the obstacle has exposed what the other truly thinks. Red's relationship with Pink weakens through the same process. Pink wants to help her sister and reclaim the closeness she remembers. Red keeps emotional distance because every expression of affection reminds her of missing years. Pink reads that distance as rejection. Red experiences Pink's persistence as pressure to perform a relationship she cannot yet feel. Neither sister is behaving without reason. Pink has lost access to the person she believes Red has always been. Red is being asked to become that person without possessing her memories. Their conflict exists because the altered timeline gave both of them a legitimate emotional history, but only one history can be consciously remembered by each girl. Lewis creates a different kind of connection for Red. He does not approach her with years of expectations. He sees the person standing in front of him rather than the sister, daughter, hero, or former troublemaker she is supposed to be. That lack of inherited pressure allows Red to lower her defenses. The connection matters because it demonstrates what Red is missing elsewhere. She can respond to someone when the relationship begins in the present. Her difficulty with Pink is not proof that Red has become incapable of love. It is proof that love becomes complicated when another person arrives carrying memories as an obligation. While the younger group travels to Wonderland, Cinderella decides to act rather than remain safely outside the crisis. Using a magical mirror connected to Bridget, she enters the palace in an attempt to rescue her old friend. Maddox captures her as well, increasing the stakes for Chloe and binding the two families more tightly to the same thread. Cinderella's choice carries a useful contrast. Red and Chloe once changed history to save their mothers. Now Cinderella willingly enters danger for Bridget. The older generation is no longer simply waiting to be protected by its children. Their friendship has become active, suggesting that the past the girls repaired produced genuine loyalty rather than only a clean or public image. But every rescue attempt also gives Maddox another source of pressure. He does not need to defeat everyone physically if he can make Red feel responsible for everyone captured. The growing danger converts her private guilt into urgency. Urgency makes explanation feel like wasted time, and every relationship begins suffering from what Red refuses to pause and say. Max reaches his own breaking point. He has joined the mission partly because he wants to prove that he is not defined by Maddox. The group's suspicion makes that goal nearly impossible. No matter what he does, his father's identity enters the room before him. Marx decides that a dramatic act will provide the evidence ordinary loyalty cannot. He separates from the group and attempts to obtain Maddox's oraculum, hoping he can become leverage in an exchange for Bridget. The decision is brave, but it also reveals how deeply he has accepted everyone else's judgment. Max does not believe he can earn trust gradually. He thinks he must perform one undeniable heroic act. Chessy reaches him at precisely that vulnerable point. Through the oraculum, Max is confronted with information about the timeline Red and Chloe replaced. He sees that his father was not always the person now threatening Wonderland, and that another version of their family once possessed the love and stability he has spent his life missing. The revelation does not excuse Maddox's actions, but it changes the emotional equation for Max. Until this moment, he has been trying to escape his father's reputation. Now he realizes that Red and Chloe's choice helped create the father he is escaping. The people judging him for Maddox's villainy are connected to the event that pushed Maddox down that path. This is where the mission stops being a simple rescue. Red wants to preserve the altered present because it saved Bridget and Cinderella. Maddox wants control of the watch because he believes history stole his life. Max begins to understand that restoring the former timeline might restore his family. Pink wants to protect the childhood she remembers. Chloe wants relief from an identity that feels increasingly restrictive. Everyone is now attached to a different version of happiness. The pocket watch becomes dangerous again without leaving the vault. Each person begins imagining what the mechanism could give back. The object attracts desire because grief makes another timeline feel cleaner than the present. Red and Chloe already proved that history can be changed. Their success makes repeating the mistake more tempting, not less. Red's deepest obstacle is therefore no longer Maddox. It is the belief that she can protect the good created by her choice without acknowledging the people who paid for it. She wants to separate responsibility from blame. That distinction is morally reasonable, but it becomes emotionally useless if she uses it to avoid listening. The divided heart finally reveals its causal function. One half carries Red's love for the life she saved. The other must make room for the lives her decision damaged. Becoming whole will not require her to decide that changing the past was entirely right or entirely wrong. It will require her to hold both truths without escaping into another rewrite. By the time the group approaches the maze surrounding the hidden vault, their original unity has collapsed. The physical destination has not changed, but the meaning of reaching it has. Some want to keep the pocket watch hidden. Others now see it as the only object capable of repairing what was lost. Friendship, family, and inherited identity have all become arguments about which history deserves protection. Red entered Wonderland believing she needed to stop Maddox from opening the vault. She now faces something more difficult. She must open the emotional history she has been avoiding, accept that another person's pain can be real even when she never intended to cause it, and decide whether a perfect timeline is worth defending if perfection requires everyone else to remain silent. And this is the moment the box opens. Completely the film's strongest achievement is Kylie Cantrall's ability to keep Red emotionally readable without making her uncertainty obvious to everyone around her. Red is written as someone who has learned to move with confidence. She enters rooms like a person accustomed to protecting herself through attitude, speed, and control. Cantrall preserves that strength while allowing tiny moments of hesitation to reveal what the character refuses to explain. The early reunion with Pink is the clearest example. Pink approaches Red with complete affection, expecting the familiar response of an older sister. Red does not openly reject her. Instead, Cantrall lets the discomfort appear in timing. Her expression needs a moment longer to match the warmth being offered. That pause proves more effective than a long explanation because it holds two emotions together. Red wants to be kind, but kindness is not the same as recognition. Liamani Segura makes the scene work from the opposite direction. Pink could easily have become irritating if her optimism felt artificial or if her attachment to red seemed designed only to force a lesson. Segura gives her openness genuine emotional weight. Pink is not cheerful because she lacks complexity. She is cheerful because loving red has always been part of her identity. When that love is not immediately returned, the disappointment feels personal rather than childish. Malia Baker brings a different form of tension to Chloe. Her performance begins from control. Chloe holds herself carefully, speaks with certainty, and carries the posture of someone who understands what goodness should look like. Baker gradually allows that polish to become restrictive. The more Chloe feels ignored or misread, the more her composure looks like effort. That transformation matters because the character's frustration does not arrive from nowhere. It has been contained inside the performance of perfection. Leonardo Nam also understands the tone required for Maddox. He plays within the theatrical scale of Wonderland, allowing gestures, expression, and vocal energy to become larger than ordinary realism. But he does not reduce Maddox to comic madness. Moments of resentment carry enough personal hurt to remind us that a spectacle has a cause. The performance remains suitable for a colorful family fantasy while preserving the emotional logic of someone who believes history stole his life. The story construction works brilliantly whenever it turns the previous film's solution into the new film's source of conflict. That is harder than simply inventing another villain. A sequel risks making an earlier victory meaningless if it reveals that nothing was actually solved. Wicked Wonderland avoids that problem. Bridget truly is kinder. Cinderella truly was saved. The good created by Red and Chloe's choice remains real. The conflict grows because those benefits were not the only results. Maddox changed. Max lost a different version of his father. Pink gained an entire childhood with Red. The story does not reverse the earlier ending. It opens hidden compartments around it. That preserves the emotional value of the rise of Red while giving the sequel a reason to exist beyond franchise expansion. The pocket watch is an effective structural center because every character gives it a different meaning. To Red, it is a responsibility that must remain buried. To Maddox, it represents stolen possibility. To Max, it may offer a family he never received. To Chloe, it proves that identity can be altered. The object stays the same, but desire changes around it. That is good fantasy writing. Magic becomes interesting when it reveals character rather than merely solving action problems. The direction and visuals are strongest when Wonderland's environments perform the emotional conflict. The chessboard transforms distrust into positioning. The maze turns confusion into blocked sight. Maddox's palace makes inherited obsession feel architectural. The royal space is present, order so polished that any hesitation becomes visible. Each major location gives the characters a different emotional problem to navigate. The film also understands the value of color coded identity without making every image visually simple. Red, pink, and glowy can be recognized instantly inside a crowded group, yet surrounding colors begin altering how their palettes feel. Red appears commanding beside softer tones and more isolated when darker shades close around her. Pink's brightness can suggest warmth in one scene and vulnerability in another. Chloe's blue moves from calm stability toward emotional coldness as her frustration builds. Music works best when it exposes a feeling the dialogue has been avoiding. Perfect Princess introduces pace and pressure at the same time. Maddox's musical material gives resentment enough scale to feel as though it has spread across Wonderland. The songs connecting Red with Pink and Louise offer different forms of intimacy. One asks Red to recognize a relationship created by the altered past. The other allows her to build something freely in the present. The Girl I Used to Be is especially effective because Brandy and Rita Ora bring mature voices and shared history into a soundtrack dominated by younger characters. The number slows the film's energy and allows Cinderella and Bridget to recognize the distance between their younger and older selves. It reminds us that identity is supposed to change over time. The problem is not transformation itself. The problem is having transformation imposed by someone else's intervention. The music also benefits from stylistic variety. Not every character experiences Wonderland through the same emotional genre. A villain number needs sharper theatricality. A romantic connection needs space and warmth. A sisterly song needs vulnerability without becoming overly sentimental. The soundtrack does not always blend perfectly, but its best choices allow musical style to distinguish relationships that the fast plot might otherwise compress together. Sound design helps the magical world retain physical energy. Transformations, card magic, environmental threats, and enchanted objects receive distinct sonic emphasis, making them feel like active forces rather than visual decoration. During quieter exchanges, the soundtrack creates room for the actor's hesitation. During musical challenges, rhythm becomes part of the danger. Sound does not merely accompany Wonderland. It helps establish whether the environment is welcoming, playful, or attempting to control the people inside it. The single scene that brings these strengths together most completely is the enchanted chessboard sequence built around dancing with the enemy. It is visually immediate. The bard establishes rules before the characters understand how those rules will be used against them. Costumes divide the figures by personality and allegiance. Choreography turns every step into a possible tactic. The music supplies energy while Chessy's manipulation introduces uncertainty. What makes the sequence unforgettable is that the external challenge is not the real threat. The group can survive a dangerous board if everyone interprets the strategy in the same way. The fracture occurs when Chloe believes Red has used her as expendable bait. Red sees a plan, Chloe feels a betrayal. The same movement therefore has two meanings, and the sequence allows both to remain emotionally credible. The scene also advances several relationships without stopping for separate conversations. Pink sees the distance growing between herself and Red. Chloe's frustration receives evidence that appears to justify it. Red's habit of acting before explaining becomes impossible to ignore. The larger group learns that unity is more fragile than their shared mission suggested. Chessy discovers exactly where to apply pressure next. This is filmmaking and story construction working together. The chess pattern is not merely an attractive reference to Alice in Wonderland, it supplies the mechanism for the conflict. Choreography is not an interruption, it creates the misunderstanding. Music is not background entertainment, it turns suspicion into momentum. Editing moves between strategy and reaction until the emotional interpretation becomes more important than the game itself. Most importantly, the scene develops our clue without repeating it. Red's divided heart is no longer only about two timelines. It now describes the separation between intention and impact. Her intention is to protect Chloe and win the challenge. The impact is that Chloe feels sacrificed. Both truths occupy the same action, just as two histories occupy the same world. That is what Wicked Wonderland does brilliantly at its best. It takes ideas that could have remained abstract and gives them a physical form. Memory becomes a box. Inherited identity becomes costume. Strategy becomes choreography. Emotional confusion becomes a maze. A friendship fracture becomes one disputed move on a chessboard. The film may move too quickly to develop every new character equally, but when performance, music, production design, and story mechanism align, it becomes more thoughtful than its bright franchise surface suggests. Those moments prove that the movie's strongest magic is not the power to rewrite history. It is the power to show why someone might desperately want to. Wicked Wonderland's greatest weakness comes from the same ambition that gives it energy. The film attempts to carry too many characters, songs, emotional arcs, locations, and pieces of franchise history inside a running time of roughly 95 minutes. Very little is dull, but several ideas feel introduced rather than fully developed. The movie keeps opening attractive compartments and moving away before we can examine what is inside. The supporting team suffers most. Hazelhook has a strong visual identity and an attitude that immediately suggests a complicated history. Robbie Hood, Felix Facilier, and the Smee brothers add personality to the group. Yet most of them function as movement, humor, or recognizable family connections, rather than complete dramatic participants. You remember how they look and who their parents are more clearly than what they personally want. That matters, because the story questions whether children can escape inherited labels. The argument would have carried greater weight if more supporting characters received choices that contradicted those labels. A descendant of a hero could have made a selfish decision. A child associated with villainy could have become essential through an unexpected moral choice. Marx receives that complexity, but the wider theme mostly remains arranged around the central conflict. Louis is charming, and Alexander Bird gives him a warm, grounded presence. Still, his connection to Encanto occasionally feels like franchise expansion, arriving before character necessity. His family identity is communicated through costume references and familiar associations, but the film does not explore how being Louisa Madrigal's son shaped his private expectations. His bond with Red works because he offers calm acceptance, yet he could have existed more fully outside that function. Red and Pink's relationship is the emotional center most damaged by the speed. The premise is excellent. Pink remembers years of sisterhood that Red cannot access. That situation could support resentment, guilt, jealousy, curiosity, and even fear. The film touches several of those emotions, but it often reduces them to Red keeping distance and Pink continuing to offer love until the story requires a deeper confrontation. More quiet scenes would have strengthened both sisters. Pink needed an opportunity to express anger without immediately returning to optimism. Red needed space to admit that accepting Pink might feel like betraying the life she remembers. Their eventual emotional progress is sincere, but the plot does some of the work the character should have completed through conversation and difficult choices. Chloe's arc has a similar problem. The film establishes that she feels trapped by the image of the perfect princess. Malia Baker communicates the growing pressure effectively, but the screenplay accelerates from hidden frustration to severe emotional rupture through a misunderstanding that could have been resolved by one honest conversation. The chessboard incident provides a believable wound, yet the intensity of what follows requires more accumulated evidence. This does not make Chloe's feelings false. It makes the mechanism too convenient. Chess's manipulation works because Chloe is already vulnerable, but the film needs another scene showing how often Chloe has felt treated as a dependable piece in Red's plans. Without that history, her anger can appear shaped by the plot rather than released from the character. Maddox is conceptually one of the franchise's more interesting antagonists. He was changed by the hero's earlier intervention, and his resentment exposes the moral cost of rewriting another person's future. Unfortunately, the film gives more time to the spectacle of his villainy than to the years that produced it. We understand the causal explanation, but we do not experience enough of his relationship with Max or his former bond with Red. That missed opportunity weakens the story's hardest question. If you want Red to confront responsibility for Maddox's pain, you need to make his lost life emotionally specific. A few more memories of the kinder Maddox would have transformed him from an understandable idea into a deeply tragic figure. Leonardo Nam supplies emotional texture, but the screenplay asks his performance to bridge gaps that should have been dramatized. The rules surrounding altered memories also remain unclear. Pink possesses a complete childhood with Red, while Red initially remembers only the former timeline. Later developments suggest that memories from the new reality may be accessible under particular emotional conditions, but the mechanism is not carefully established. Is history replacing memory, adding to it, or allowing both versions to coexist? The film chooses the rule needed for the emotional moment without fully defining its limits. Fantasy does not require scientific explanations for everything. It does require consistency when magic controls the central conflict. The uncertainty becomes distracting because memory is not a minor detail. It determines whether Red can genuinely know Pink, whether Max can understand the life he lost, and whether anyone can make an informed choice about protecting the timeline. The music creates another pacing issue. Several songs are effective, but 11 original numbers leave limited room for dramatic silence. A song may express an emotion beautifully. Then the story moves directly into another challenge without allowing the consequence to settle. The film occasionally treats musical expression as if it automatically resolves what has been expressed. Its visual abundance can also become exhausting. Wonderland's strongest sets contain specific objects and textures that reward attention. During faster, effects heavy sequences, that clarity sometimes disappears beneath saturated color, rapid cutting, and magical movement. The image remains energetic, but the physical geography becomes harder to understand. The practical detail is more convincing than the moments when spectacle covers it. These weaknesses do not destroy the experience. The central performances remain engaging, the world has personality, and the causal link to the rise of Red gives the sequel genuine purpose. The problems mainly limit the depth of ideas that are already present. Wicked Wonderland is not shallow because it has nothing to say. It is shallow in places because it does not give itself enough time to finish saying it. A longer cut, fewer supporting characters, or two fewer songs could have created room for Maddox and Max, allowed Chloe's frustration to accumulate naturally, and made Red's acceptance of being more emotionally difficult. The film would not need a darker tone, it would simply need to trust stillness as much as movement. The box contains strong pieces. The weakness is how quickly the film asks us to close one compartment and open the next, place Wicked Wonderland beside The Rise of Red, and the most important difference is how each film understands time travel. The Rise of Red treats the past as an emotional puzzle. Red and Chloe identify the moment that appears to have created the Queen of Hearts and attempt to change it. The adventure moves toward intervention. The pocket watch promises that pain can be prevented if the correct piece is moved soon enough. Wicked Wonderland turns that promise into a moral complication. Time travel is no longer the exciting mechanism that carries the heroes into a new setting. It becomes evidence of how confidently they acted without understanding the complete system. That makes Wicked Wonderland the more mature half of the story. It asks about responsibility after success rather than ending at success itself. The sequel also creates a richer fantasy environment. Wonderland has stronger location identity, more detailed design, and a wider range of musical modes than the school centered past in The Rise of Red. But the earlier film benefits from a cleaner central relationship. Red and Chloe have more room to carry the narrative together. Wicked Wonderland gives them a more interesting conflict while surrounding that conflict with so many new characters that their friendship sometimes receives less attention. Descendants 3 provides another useful comparison. Both films explore the danger of treating someone's goodness as permanent and effortless. Audrey's resentment grows because everyone expects her to remain inside the role created for her. Chloe experiences a related pressure as the dependable perfect princess. Their emotional pain becomes dangerous only after others have ignored it for too long. Descendants Tree handles that transformation with stronger preparation. Audrey's disappointment is attached to relationships and expectations built across the earlier films. When she breaks, the audience understands the history behind the reaction even when her choices become wrong. Wicked Wonderland gives Chloe a compelling internal problem, but it accelerates her movement toward open anger. The idea is equally strong. The development is thinner. Where Wicked Wonderland surpasses Descendants 3 is in the moral connection between hero and antagonist. Audrey is harmed by neglect, public humiliation, and inherited expectations, but the heroes did not directly rewrite her life. Maddox exists in his current form partly because of Red and Chloe's intervention. That causal link gives the conflict a sharper ethical edge. Red cannot defeat him and return to innocence. She must recognize herself inside the mechanism that produced him. Alice Through the Looking Glass is the clearest visual and narrative companion. Both stories combine Wonderland with a device capable of crossing time. Both connect the Hatter family to loss, obsession, and the desire to recover a life that appears unreachable. Both use clocks, elaborate rooms, saturated colors, and impossible geography to make time feel physically present. The difference lies in where each film places the emotional cost. Alice Through the Looking Glass treats time as a force Alice must learn to respect. Its adventure is built around the danger of taking control of something larger than one person's understanding. Wicked Wonderland makes that lesson more relational. The timeline is not only unstable, it has redistributed love, family, and blame between people. Alice Through the Looking Glass offers clearer rules and a more spectacular sense of scale. Wicked Wonderland offers a more personal consequence. Maddox is not dangerous because time itself has become angry. He is dangerous because someone else used time and never knew what disappeared from his life. The smaller scale creates the stronger human question, even when the film's magical logic remains less consistent. Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, offers the most surprising comparison. That animated sequel also uses altered history to question whether a happy ending remains meaningful when the path toward it has been rewritten. Cinderella must prove that identity and love are deeper than the official version of events. The film understands that changing a timeline does not automatically change the qualities a person developed inside the original one. Wicked Wonderland explores the inverse. Red changes the past to create a happier family, then discovers that her own emotional development cannot be rewritten as easily. Cinderella the Three asks whether love survives when history removes recognition. Wicked Wonderland asks whether love can be accepted when history creates recognition that only one person remembers. Cinderella Thirty tells that idea through a tighter story. Its smaller ensemble gives each alteration a clear consequence, and its magic follows a more disciplined pattern. Wicked Wonderland is visually larger and musically more varied, but it sometimes loses precision as new descendants and future possibilities enter the frame. What Wicked Wonderland does that these films do not is combine inherited identity with unequal memory. Red and Pink are not simply sisters separated by misunderstanding. They possess different emotional evidence about the same relationship. Mats and Red are not merely standing on opposite sides of a conflict, they remember different versions of Maddox. The older timeline gives everyone a sincere reason to protect a reality another person experiences as loss. If you loved Wicked Wonderland for its characters and consequences, The Rise of Red is essential because the two films function like one cause and effect story. After that, Cinderella 3, A Twisting Time is the strongest next choice. It is lighter and more compact, but it asks a similarly intelligent question about whether a rewritten happy ending still belongs to the people living inside it. If the Wonderland imagery was your favorite element, Alice Through the Looking Glass offers a larger visual journey with a stronger emphasis on clocks, impossible architecture, and the Hatter family. It is less emotionally precise in places, but its time travel mythology is easier to follow. If Wicked Wonderland felt too crowded, Descendants 3 is the better franchise alternative. It carries a large cast but gives its central antagonist more accumulated history and allows the established characters to share the climax more effectively. It offers the familiar music, costumes, and hero versus villain identity conflict with a cleaner emotional structure. And if you enjoy the theme of family expectations but not the franchise machinery, Encanto is the film to watch instead. Its musical storytelling gives each major song a specific psychological purpose, and its family conflict develops without requiring time travel or a traditional villain. Wicked Wonderland is not the most disciplined film in this comparison box. It does not have Cinderella Thayer's economy, Descendants 3's accumulated character history, or Alice Through the Looking Glass's scale. What it has is a uniquely uncomfortable question. What if you created the happy ending, stepped inside it, and discovered that it belonged to everyone except the version of you who made it possible? Wicked Wonderland arrived at a moment when the Descendants franchise was balancing two different identities. The original films were Disney Channel events. They premiered at scheduled times, gathered young fans around television screens, and turned songs, costumes, and characters into a shared cultural moment. This fifth film did premiere on Disney Channel, but it moved to Disney Plus the following day. That release pattern reveals how completely youth entertainment has changed. A modern franchise film no longer lives only inside its running time. Songs are released before the premiere. Choreography becomes short form video. Character costumes circulate through social media, dolls, performances, and Halloween products. A young person may encounter Perfect Princess weeks before understanding its narrative function. Someone else may discover Pink or Chessy through a clip before watching the film. Wicked Wonderland is designed for that fragmented form of discovery. This explains why every new character needs an immediately readable color, parent silhouette, and musical identity. The film cannot assume that its first impression will occur during the opening scene. A single image may need to communicate who someone is. That creates powerful visual branding, but it also contributes to the problem of characters feeling designed before they feel developed. The franchise itself was already 11 years old when Wicked Wonderland premiered. Children who watched the first Descendants in 2015 are now older teenagers or adults. The new film must speak to current children while giving returning fans enough continuity to feel that their earlier attachment still matters. Brandy and Paolo Montalban extend that connection even further, reaching back to their 1997 Cinderella. The result is entertainment built across generations. Pink, Louis, Hazel, and Max invite a new group into the franchise. Red and Chloe carry the second wave forward. Cinderella and King Charming connect the film to an older piece of Disney television history. That layering is commercially intelligent, but it also reflects the story's theme. Every generation enters a world already shaped by the stories attached to its parents. Socially, the film arrived during a period when younger storytelling increasingly questions the pressure to appear emotionally perfect. Chloe's conflict belongs to that moment. She is praised for being dependable, principled, and controlled, but those positive qualities become a box she is afraid to leave. The story recognizes that expectations do not become harmless simply because they sound flattering. Red's problem also connects to contemporary conversations about family patterns. She changes the event that harmed her mother, hoping to prevent pain from passing into the next generation. The fantasy mechanism is time travel, but the emotional wish is familiar. Many people want to end a pattern without losing the identity they developed while surviving it. Wicked Wonderland turns that desire into a literal alternate timeline. The movie is not presenting a political argument, and forcing one onto it would make the analysis less accurate. Its cultural relevance is more personal. It asks who gets to define a family's history, whether children owe loyalty to inherited rules, and how someone accepts responsibility for consequences they never intended. Those questions travel beyond the particular moment even when the film's presentation remains unmistakably modern. Cinematically, Wicked Wonderland belongs to an era dominated by established intellectual property. Its world combines Alice in Wonderland, Cinderella, Encanto, Peter Pan, Robin Hood, The Princess and the Frog, and other Disney traditions through the descendants of familiar characters. That creates instant recognition, but it also demonstrates how aggressively contemporary franchise storytelling searches existing libraries for new connections. The film is strongest when those connections produce a new emotional idea. Lewis works when his family heritage informs the warmth and steadiness he offers Red. Hazel works when Captain Hook's reputation creates assumptions she can challenge. The references become weaker when a famous parent functions only as a label. Recognition can open the door, but character must still walk through it. The early critical response has been limited but generally warmer than the reaction to the rise of Red. At the time of this analysis, Rotten Tomatoes lists only 4 professional reviews, which is not enough for a meaningful critical percentage. Those early notices commonly praise a stronger Wonderland identity, energetic choreography, soundtrack, lead performances, and improvement over the previous installment. The reservations are equally consistent. Several reviews point to an overfilled cast, supporting characters who disappear from the narrative, a villain who needed more development, and conflicts that could have been reduced to honest communication. That pattern closely matches the film's actual strengths and weaknesses. Critics appear to appreciate the craft and improvement while recognizing that the screenplay has more pieces than it can properly hold. The audience response is more divided. Rotten Tomatoes currently shows a popcorn meter in the high 60s from more than 100 ratings. Positive reactions frequently celebrate the song's colorful production design, Red and Chloe's expanded role, and the feeling that the franchise has recovered after a disappointing previous entry. Negative responses are more likely to reject a childish story, rapid emotional turns, or the continuing expansion beyond the original cast. The difference does not represent a simple split between critics and fans. Dedicated fans are among the most enthusiastic responses. The division exists between people who accept the language of Descendants and people who want the film to operate like a self-contained fantasy. If you already enjoy color-coded Descendants, electronic pop theatrical villains, and rapid franchise references, Wicked Wonderland can feel generous. If you need deeper character development before accepting another wave of children connected to famous names, it can feel manufactured. Its streaming life has only just begun. The film reached Disney Plus on July 17, 2026, so there is not yet enough time to identify long term viewing patterns or a genuine second wave discovery. Third party streaming chart reports placed it at or near the top of Disney Plus movie rankings shortly after release, but Disney has not yet supplied a complete official viewership figure. Any stronger claim would be premature. The more reliable early sign is the franchise ecosystem surrounding it. Disney promoted the film with advanced soundtrack releases, official videos, cast performances, interviews, merchandise, and a wider Descendants collection on Disney Plus. The studio reported substantial social attention for Perfect Princess during its initial promotional period. The film did not enter streaming alone. It arrived as the center of a coordinated music and character campaign. A second wave will probably depend less on traditional reviews than on which songs and relationships remain active online. Heartless has a kind of dramatic character energy that can travel through fan edits. The sister dynamic between red and pink can support discussion and performance clips. The final mystery encourages theory videos. These are predictions based on the film's design, not confirmed measures of lasting impact. No meaningful awards conclusion can be made yet. The film has been publicly available for only a few days, and there are no major confirmed wins to evaluate. Calling it overlooked at this stage would be dishonest. If youth, television, music, or craft organizations recognize it later, choreography, costume design, production design, and selected songs are the areas most deserving of attention. The chessboard number deserves particular consideration because it combines set geometry, group choreography, editing, costume color, and narrative conflict rather than presenting dance as a separate attraction. The costume work also deserves recognition for making a large ensemble immediately distinguishable while embedding character specific symbols. Recognition in those areas would reflect genuine craft rather than franchise popularity alone. Will Wicked Wonderland feel timeless? Emotionally, parts of it can. The fear of disappointing your family, the pain of being judged through a parent, and the wish to repair the past will remain understandable. Red's divided relationship with memory does not depend on one cultural trend. Its presentation, however, is perfectly of 2026. The streaming first life, songs designed to circulate independently, saturated digital polish, cross franchise connections, social media ready choreography, and constant expansion of familiar intellectual property all identify the period that produced it. Years from now, those qualities may become part of its charm or the reason it feels dated. The film is therefore both timeless and time stamped. Its emotional question can survive. Its packaging records the moment when Disney Channel history, streaming culture, legacy casting, and short form music promotion all occupy the same Wonderland box. The strongest theories begin with the final memory box shared by Red and Pink. The film deliberately refuses to show its contents clearly. Pink discovers something glowing, the object enters the box, and Chessy frames the moment as proof that the story is not finished. Executive producer Suzanne Todd has confirmed that the ending was filmed in several forms and that the team considered specific future directions before choosing the most ambiguous version. That makes one point clear: the object is not random decoration. What it actually does remains unconfirmed. The most grounded theory is that the glow comes from a surviving fragment of the magic already used during the conflict. Some fans interpret it as a piece connected to Max's enchanted bracelet. Others believe it may be a fragment of the pocket watch or another object carrying related time magic. Both versions follow the same basic idea. The characters believe the dangerous mechanism has been removed, but part of its power remains. The bracelet interpretation has a visual advantage because the mysterious piece resembles a kind of small magical component that could be overlooked after a transformation. It would also preserve the film's pattern of unintended consequences. Max creates one magical solution, the immediate problem appears resolved, and a discarded piece begins another chain. The pocket watch theory carries greater thematic weight but less visible proof. Red attempts to remove the watch permanently, so revealing that a fragment survived would show that history cannot be erased through one dramatic gesture. However, the film never clearly identifies the glowing object as part of the watch. Treating that connection as confirmed would go beyond the evidence. A stronger variation is that the treasure box itself has magical properties. Earlier, the box is associated with Red gaining access to memories from the altered childhood she shared with Pink. The story never fully explains whether those memories return because of the location, the emotional bond, the objects inside, or the altered timeline finally settling. Fans have therefore suggested that the box may store memories across different versions of history. If that is true, Pink is not simply carrying a childhood keepsake. She possesses an object capable of connecting realities that should no longer exist together. The glowing piece may activate, corrupt, or expand that ability. This theory fits the film better than the idea of another ordinary time machine. Wicked Wonderland has already explored physical travel into the past. A sequel would need a different mechanism to avoid repeating the same adventure. A box that reveals erased memories could create conflict without sending the characters back through identical events. Red, Pink, Max, and Maddox could confront the lives they lost or gained while remaining in the present. Another documented theory predicts that the next destination will be Neverland. The evidence comes from several directions. Hazel Hook connects the new group to Captain Hook. The film contains a reference to Tinker Bell. The object inside the box appears small, luminous, and fairy like. Some interpretations therefore identify the glow as fairy dust or a fragment connected to Neverland magic. The theory is possible, especially because Descendants expands by opening another famous Disney world and introducing its children. Neverland would provide pirates, fairies, lost children, and another story about refusing to grow or accept time. Those themes could connect naturally to characters still trying to recover earlier versions of their families, but the visual clue remains too vague to prove this. A glowing object in a Disney fantasy can suggest many forms of magic. Hazel's presence may prepare a future Captain Hook story, or it may simply broaden the current ensemble. The Neverland interpretation is attractive because it creates a complete sequel pitch, not because Wicked Wonderland confirms it. The most popular character theory is that Pink could become the next villain. Leomani Segura has playfully encouraged this possibility in interviews, suggesting that Pink might contain an unknown power or receive a transformation similar to an earlier Descendants antagonist. The ending isolates Pink with the mysterious object while Chessy delivers an ominous promise, so the editing intentionally makes her look connected to the next disruption. Still, the film itself does not support the idea that Pink is secretly evil. Her choices consistently come from loyalty, optimism, and a sincere desire to know Red. She is hurt by rejection but does not respond with cruelty. Turning her into a hidden mastermind would contradict the character developed here, unless the next story shows an external influence or gives her a new reason to change. A more convincing version is that Pink becomes an accidental catalyst. Her curiosity may activate the object. Her desire to preserve memories with Red may lead her to use magic without understanding it. That would mirror Red's earlier mistake without simply repeating Red's personality. Pink would not need to become malicious. She would only need to believe that protecting a happy memory cannot hurt anyone. The theory that holds up best concerns Chessy. Some fans argue that Maddox was never the story's true controlling intelligence, and that Chessy has been preparing a separate plan. The film strongly supports this interpretation. Chessy understands each character's insecurity, moves between locations with unusual freedom, manipulates Max and Chloe, survives the collapse of Maddox's plan, and controls the final narration. Unlike Maddox, Jessie does not appear obsessed with restoring one version of history. She seems interested in instability itself. Maddox wants the pocket watch because he believes it can repair his life. Jessie enjoys watching trust collapse. That difference makes her more adaptable and potentially more dangerous. Her connection to the treasure box may therefore matter more than the object's exact identity. Jessie could have placed it where Pink would find it, guided her toward it, or simply recognized what Pink had discovered. The final smile suggests knowledge, but it does not reveal whether Jessie created the next problem or is preparing to exploit it. A weaker group of theories attempts to connect the object to the unseen father of Red and Pink. Fans have proposed several famous Disney figures based on brief references and possible franchise pairings. At present, the film supplies too little evidence to choose among them. The father question may become important, but the glowing object cannot be treated as proof of any specific identity. The theory that best connects all available clues is this: the treasure box preserves emotional history. The new object introduces another form of magic. Pink activates it through innocent curiosity, and Chessy uses the resulting instability for her own purpose. This interpretation respects Pink's established character, continues the theme of unintended consequences, and gives Chessy a reason to remain outside Maddox's defeat. It also returns us to Divided Heart. Red spent the film learning that she cannot select only the memories that make her life easier. Pink may now possess a box that makes selective memory physically possible. The next danger would not come from someone wanting to destroy a family. It would come from someone trying to preserve the sweetest version of it. Beneath the time travel, royal families, and Wonderland magic, the film is asking a question about permission. Who has the right to rewrite another person's life? Red and Chloe enter the past with loving intentions. They want to prevent Bridget's pain and protect Cinderella. But their decision changes people who never agreed to become part of the experiment. Maddox loses one future. Max grows up with a different father. Pink receives an existence and a family history that Red cannot remember. The action saves lives emotionally and physically, yet it also treats history as property belonging to the people holding the pocket watch. That is why the watch represents more than time. It represents the fantasy of authorship. Whoever controls it can decide which pain deserves to exist, which relationship should be preserved, and which version of a person counts as the correct one. The temptation is powerful because everyone believes they would use that authority for a good reason. Maddox exposes the flaw by repeating it. He resents Red and Chloe for changing his life without consent, but his answer is to seize the same authority and impose his preferred history on everyone else. He understands the wound and copies the mechanism that caused it. Pain teaches him what was wrong but not how to avoid becoming the person who does it next. This pattern appears without magic in Chloe's perfect princess identity. Everyone around her has written a flattering role and expects her to continue performing it. She should be loyal, calm, brave, forgiving, and useful. No one intends to harm her. Yet, praise becomes a form of control when she is not allowed to refuse the qualities being praised. Pink faces another version. She knows what a loving sister should look like because her memories tell her Red has always occupied that role. Her love is sincere, but her expectation still asks Red to perform a history she does not possess. Pink must eventually recognize that blood and memory cannot force emotional consent. Sisterhood has to be built again in the present. Red makes the same discovery from the opposite side. She cannot control what Pink remembers, but she can decide whether to meet the person in front of her. That is the film's deeper definition of relationship. Love is not proof that you know what someone should become. Love is the willingness to discover who that person is after your expectations fail. The chessboard becomes the clearest symbol of the problem. A chess piece has value through function. One protects, one attacks, one is sacrificed so another can move. Strategy requires seeing each figure as a role rather than a complete life. That is useful on a board and dangerous in a relationship. Red sees Chloe as the person capable of completing a move. Chloe feels that Red has reduced her to the dependable piece who will always accept the risk. The misunderstanding hurts because it converts friendship into strategy. Red values Chloe, but in that moment she values what Chloe can do before asking what Chloe is willing to do. The maze offers the correction. A chessboard can be viewed completely from above. A maze cannot be understood from inside through one person's perspective. Walls hide other paths. Someone may be close while remaining invisible. Progress requires accepting that your view is incomplete. That is the human difference between control and empathy. Control assumes the complete pattern can be seen and improved by the person making the move. Empathy begins by admitting that another person has an interior path you cannot fully observe. Red changed history from the perspective available to her. The maze forces her to understand that every life extends beyond the section she can see. The royal vault symbolizes avoidance. Red and Chloe place the pocket watch behind walls because they want the moral problem to end when the physical object disappears. People do this in ordinary life. We hide evidence of a painful decision, stop discussing a family conflict, or declare that everyone should move forward because the immediate crisis has passed. But silence is not resolution. The consequences continue developing outside the locked room. Maddox's resentment grows. Max builds an identity around loss. Red and Pink remain divided by memories they cannot share. The vault protects their watch while allowing the emotional danger to spread. The treasure box offers a different relationship with the past. A vault hides what people fear. A treasure box preserves what people value. Both are containers, but they perform opposite emotional tasks. One attempts to remove history from sight. The other allows small pieces of history to remain present. That difference suggests the film's deepest answer. The past should not be controlled or buried, it should be held. A box can contain objects from different moments without forcing them to become one object. Red can carry memories of the crueler timeline while accepting the family created by the kinder one. Pink can keep her childhood memories without demanding that Red instantly share them. Max can grieve the father he might have had without turning every other life into the price of restoring him. The divided heart changes meaning through this idea. At first, it appears to represent damage. A heart should be complete, so a line through it seems to show something broken. But the film gradually suggests that wholeness does not require removing the line. The division can become a scene joining truths that remain different. Red loved the mother she wanted Bridget to become. She was also shaped by the mother Bridget used to be. One truth does not cancel the other. Healing does not erase the person who learned to survive before healing arrived. That matters beyond fantasy. Most people cannot enter the past, but many still imagine the conversation they would change, the relationship they would save, or the warning they would give their younger selves. The wish often comes from love. It can also contain a quiet rejection of the person produced by what actually happened. If every painful event vanished, you might receive a gentler life. You might also lose friendships formed through recovery, strengths built through necessity, or compassion developed because you understand a particular wound. That does not mean pain was good or necessary. It means a human life cannot be edited without touching more than the sentence you regret. The film does not argue that people should accept harm because consequences are complicated. Bridget deserved kindness. Cinderella deserved safety. Red deserved a mother who did not make love feel like fear. The deeper lesson is that repair requires attention to everyone affected, not only certainty about the person you intended to save. Responsibility is therefore different from self condemnation. Red does not need to call herself a villain for making an imperfect decision under pressure. She needs to listen when Max explains what the decision cost him. Accountability begins when protecting your good intention becomes less important than understanding another person's pain. Maddox cannot make that shift. He treats suffering as permission to control. Red's growth depends on refusing the same excuse. She must accept that being responsible for harm does not mean she intended it, and lacking harmful intention does not remove responsibility. This is what the film is really opening. Not a vault, not a timeline, not another Disney kingdom. It opens the uncomfortable space between saving someone and deciding for them. A hero is not the person who always knows which history is correct. A hero is the person willing to stop moving. Everyone, like pieces, enters the maze without a complete map and listen to lives that do not fit inside her preferred ending. The broken heart becomes whole when it stops demanding a world with only one truth. Wicked Wonderland is too new to have changed cinema, influenced later productions, or developed a reliable long-term reputation. It premiered only days ago. No later film or series can yet be connected to its influence, and Disney has not officially confirmed the sixth Descendants movie. The final mystery clearly preserves that possibility, but a cliffhanger is not the same as a production announcement. That distinction matters. Franchise analysis often turns promotion into history before enough time has passed. A colorful release can dominate discussion for 1 week and disappear the next. A song can begin with strong engagement and either become a lasting favorite or remain attached to its launch campaign. The honest legacy assessment must begin with what the film has already changed inside its own franchise. Its most important contribution is proving that The Rise of Red was not merely an isolated attempt to revive Descendants with new leads. Wicked Wonderland gives Red and Chloe a second complete adventure, expands their relationships, and builds a wider generation around them that transforms the 2024 film from a temporary continuation into the beginning of a recognizable second era. The original trilogy centered Mal, Evie, Carlos, Jay, and the conflict between Auradon and the Isle of the Lost. The newer era shifts toward altered fairy tale histories and collisions between multiple Disney worlds. Wonderland is not simply another location. It becomes a meeting point for the children of characters associated with Alice, Encanto, Peter Pan, Robin Hood, Cinderella, and the Princess and the Frog. That expansion may become the film's defining franchise influence if later installments continue it. Descendants would no longer be primarily about the children of famous villains entering one heroic kingdom. It would become a flexible crossover structure capable of moving between Disney storyverse and assembling new teams from each one. The advantage is nearly unlimited variety. Every kingdom can bring a different visual language, musical style, family conflict, and set of inherited expectations. The danger is that recognizable parentage can replace character development. Wicked Wonderland demonstrates both possibilities. Pink and Max gain meaningful emotional functions. Several other descendants arrive with excellent designs but limited narrative purpose. Its second contribution is making consequences central to the new era. Earlier descendant stories frequently asked whether a child must repeat a parent's identity. Wicked Wonderland keeps that question but adds another. What happens when a heroic choice improves one family while damaging another? That moral complication gives the franchise a path toward more mature storytelling without abandoning its young audience or musical fantasy tone. If later films preserve that idea, this installment may be remembered as the point when the revived series found its own thematic identity. If future stories ignore the consequences and use the new characters only for expansion, Wicked Wonderland may instead feel like a promising transition that opened more doors than the franchise could meaningfully enter. The film also preserves an unusual piece of television history through Brandy and Paolo Montalban. Their return allows a version of Cinderella and Charming introduced in 1997 to exist as parents inside the 2026 youth franchise. This is not merely a cameo. It gives the Descendants universe a connection across nearly 3 decades of Disney television storytelling. Melanie Paxton's continued presence as fairy godmother across all 5 films provides another form of continuity. These returning performers prevent the second generation from feeling completely detached from what came before. Their presence says that franchise renewal does not always require erasing the older version. A new group can grow while earlier histories remain visible. The film's release strategy may prove historically more revealing than its story. It premiered on Disney Channel and moved to Disney Plus the following day, combining the scheduled television event associated with the original films and the on-demand streaming model surrounding the newer era. That hybrid approach captures a period when traditional youth television and platform streaming still coexist. Wicked Wonderland therefore represents the modern evolution of the Disney Channel original movie. It remains accessible, music-driven, youth-focused, and designed around emerging performers, but it is also built for global streaming discovery. Pre-release songs, social video, franchise collections, merchandise, and continued viewing outside a fixed broadcast schedule. That does not make it a landmark in cinema history. Its ambitions and distribution are different from a major theatrical musical. The film is better understood as an example of how television movie franchises survive after the center of youth culture moves away from scheduled television. Its reputation is currently forming around one repeated judgment. It is an improvement over The Rise of Red without replacing the original trilogy in fan affection. Early professional reviews praise its Wonderland design, soundtrack, choreography, and stronger character work. Audience responses are more divided, though many enthusiastic fans identify it as one of the better recent entries. That reputation could grow if the soundtrack remains active, Pink becomes a major franchise character, or a future installment fulfills the mysteries established here. The film contains several ideas that may become stronger in retrospect if later stories develop them. Max's lost timeline, Jesse's unresolved role, the memory box, and the absent pieces of Red's family history could all make this chapter feel like careful preparation. Its reputation could shrink if those elements remain unresolved. A sequel hook only gains meaning when a later story transforms it into something necessary. Otherwise, the blowing object becomes promotion rather than storytelling, and the large supporting cast begins to resemble a catalogue of possible merchandise rather than a community. The musical sequence most likely to remain associated with the film is the chessboard confrontation. It gives Wonderland a distinct visual identity while integrating choreography with distrust and strategy. The mature duet between Cinderella and Bridget may also age well because Brandy and Rita Ora bring a vocal and emotional texture that separates it from the younger pop material. Pink has the clearest opportunity to become the film's lasting character contribution. She is visually immediate, emotionally accessible, and connected to the central mystery. More importantly, her optimism is not identical to Red's defiance or Chloe's discipline. She adds a different energy rather than functioning as another variation of an existing lead. What does it mean for film history that Wicked Wonderland exists? On the largest scale, not much can be claimed yet. It has not transformed the musical, fantasy film, or family sequel. On a smaller and more accurate scale, it records how a long running television franchise adapted to streaming culture while attempting to replace its original generation without cutting itself away from the past. That makes the film an appropriate object for its own theme. Descendants changed, but it did not erase the version that came before. The original trilogy, The Rise of Red, the 1997 Cinderella, classic Wonderland imagery, Encanto, and a new cast all remain inside the same box. Whether that box becomes a meaningful shared history or an overcrowded collection will depend on what Disney opens next. Alright, full spoilers from this point. If you haven't seen the film yet, close this now. Go watch it and come back when you're ready. Trust me, you'll want to experience it fresh. The first decisive reveal is that changing Bridget's past did not simply create a kinder Queen of Hearts, it produced an entirely different network of relationships. Red now has Pink as a younger sister. Max grew up under the shadow of a villainous Maddox. Most importantly, young Maddox witnessed Red and Chloe using the pocket watch and became obsessed with recovering it. That observation is the hidden origin of the antagonist. Maddox does not become dangerous because the outer timeline randomly assigns him a villain role. He becomes dangerous because Red and Chloe reveal that history can be controlled. The object gives him knowledge, the knowledge becomes obsession, and the obsession destroys his relationship with Wonderland and Max. Bridget eventually banishes Maddox and Max to the Isle of the Lost. After the Isle's barrier falls, Maddox returns, but freedom cannot repair the years he believes were stolen. He captures Bridget, takes control of her magical cards, and begins searching for the royal vault where Red and Chloe hid the watch. Red receives Bridget's distress signal and returns with Chloe, Pink, and the new Descendants. This rescue mission contains the film's central irony. Red is trying to save the kind of mother created by her intervention from the man damaged by that same intervention. Protecting one result means confronting another. The enchanted chessboard then exposes a fracture inside Red and Chloe's friendship. Red expects Chloe to understand a dangerous tactic involving the carnivorous flower and her dagger. Chloe believes Red has used her as bait. Chessy encourages that interpretation until one disputed move begins carrying every unspoken frustration Chloe has hidden beneath her perfect princess image. Chloe's anger is not really about one flower. She has become tired of being the reliable person who absorbs risk while Red makes the decisions. The chessboard makes that emotional structure visible. Red believes trust means Chloe will follow her plan. Chloe believes trust should have required Red to explain the plan first. Cinderella enters Wonderland through Bridget's magical mirror and attempts a rescue of her own, but Maddox captures her. This development brings the mothers into the conflict as active participants rather than prizes waiting at the end. It also proves that the friendship Red and Chloe protected in the past became real in the present. Max separates from the group because he wants to prove that he is not defined by Maddox. He seeks the oraculum, believing it can become leverage for Bridget's release. Instead, Chessy uses it to show him the truth about the original timeline. Max sees that Maddox was once loving and that Red and Chloe's intervention helped create the father he now fears. That revelation destroys the moral arrangement supporting the mission. Max has been judged because of Maddox while traveling beside the people connected to Maddox's transformation. His response is understandable before it becomes wrong. Max wants the family history he lost, but instead of demanding accountability, he reaches for control. He creates an enchanted bracelet and approaches Chloe when she feels most betrayed. The bracelet amplifies the anger she has been suppressing and transforms her into a darker version of herself. Chloe's visual change fulfills the clue placed in the early poster near the Jabberwocky's cave. Her blue identity becomes sharper and more threatening. The transformation is magical, but it works because the emotion already exists. Max does not invent her resentment. He gives it permission, power, and a target. Together, Max and Chloe enter the hedge maze surrounding the vault. Their goals overlap without being identical. Max wants the watch to prevent Maddox's fall. Chloe wants freedom from the role that has made her feel useful but unseen. Both believe changing the external world will resolve an internal wound. Red and Louise pursue them, but the maze separates Red from everyone else. She discovers the treasure box created by the version of herself who grew up with Pink. Contact with that emotional history allows memories from the altered childhood to reach her. This is the film's largest unexplained magical turn, but it serves an essential emotional purpose. Red does not accept Pink because someone tells her that sisterhood is morally required. She experiences enough of their shared past to understand that Pink's love belongs to a real history, even if that history was not originally hers. When Pink finds Red, their reconciliation becomes possible because both sisters finally surrender a false expectation. Pink stops demanding the old Red she remembers. Red stops treating Pink as an unwanted consequence. They choose to meet as a people standing inside the present. That does not erase the unequal memories, but it changes what those memories mean. The two halves of Red's heart are no longer competing timelines. They become two forms of evidence about who she can choose to love now. Red and Pink reach Chloe and Max at the vault. Max explains that he intends to use the pocket watch to prevent Maddox from becoming a villain. His plan repeats Red's original mistake almost perfectly. He identifies one painful event, assumes changing it will create the correct future, and treats every unseen consequence as a risk worth taking. Chloe then takes the watch for herself. This is the most revealing point in her transformation. She does not merely support Max's family goal. She sees the watch as a way to escape the identity that has trapped her. The object offers authorship over a self she believes everyone else has written. Red finally responds differently from the person who changed history in the previous film. She does not defeat Chloe through greater magic. She speaks to the hurt beneath the transformation and acknowledges the damage between them. Chloe removes the bracelet, returning to herself, and their reconciliation begins. The resolution happens quickly, but its mechanism is correct. Chloe is not restored because anger disappears. She is restored because someone finally recognizes that her anger exists. The film distinguishes feeling something dangerous from choosing what to do with that feeling. Red and Chloe then confront Max with the lesson they learned too late. Another alteration may save Maddox while creating new victims they cannot predict. Max reluctantly accepts that the watch cannot guarantee the family he wants without placing every other family at risk. Red throws the pocket watch into a magical well, apparently removing it from their world. The action reverses her earlier relationship with the object. She once used it because she trusted herself to choose the correct history. Now she destroys access because she understands that no single person should possess that authority. they return to the palace and help Bridget and Cinderella defeat Maddox. The final physical confrontation matters less than Red's decision afterward. Bridget's old instinct briefly returns as she reacts with the harsh judgment once associated with the Queen of Hearts. The moment is played lightly, but it reminds us that changing history did not erase every trace of who she might have become. Red asks Bridget not to answer Maddox's wrongdoing with another punishment built from anger. More importantly, Red apologizes to Maddox and acknowledges her connection to the life he lost. She does not excuse his capture of Wonderland or pretend that responsibility belongs only to her. She accepts that his harmful choices grew from damage her decision helped create. This is the ending's real victory. Maddox is stopped, but Red no longer needs him to be completely evil for herself to remain good. She can condemn what he did while recognizing why he is hurt. The divided heart becomes capable of holding responsibility and self-forgiveness at the same time. My reaction to the ending is mixed for exactly that reason. Red's apology is the morally correct destination and Kylie Cantrall gives it sincerity. But Maddox and Max lose an entire loving family history, and the resolution gives them very little space to process that loss. The film asks them to accept the timeline because changing it again would be dangerous. That is logically sensible but emotionally incomplete. Destroying the watch prevents another mistake. It does not repair the first one. A stronger ending would have given Red a concrete way to support Max and help Maddox rebuild something in the present. Accountability becomes more meaningful when it continues after the apology. The celebration suggests that the immediate relationships are healing. Red accepts Pink. Chloe returns to her friends. Bridget and Cinderella are safe. Wonderland is released from Maddox's control, yet the final details refuse complete closure. There is no separate conventional post-credits sequence that changes the resolved conflict. Instead, the final stinger performs that function before the story fully closes. Pink returns for the memory box she shares with Red and discovers a mysterious glowing object. She places it inside without understanding its significance. Chessy then takes control of the ending and makes it clear that more mischief is coming. Maddox has been captured, but Chessy remains free, informed, and interested in instability. The film quietly reveals that defeating the visible villain did not remove the person who manipulated nearly every emotional fracture. The memory box is therefore the final opposite of the vault. Red and Chloe place dangerous magic in a vault to hide it. Pink places unknown magic inside a box devoted to preserving love and memory. The next threat may not begin through revenge. It may begin because someone protects a beautiful object without asking what else it carries. That glowing fragment could be connected to Max's bracelet, the pocket watch, fairy magic, or another future world. The film does not confirm an answer. What it confirms is the pattern. A powerful object survives, a well-intentioned character keeps it. Chessy knows more than the heroes. The heartbreak emblem now completes its trail. Red begins divided between the life she remembers and the family created by her choice. She ends by accepting both, apologizing for the damage and refusing to rewrite anyone again. The symbol never needed to become an unbroken heart. Red needed to understand that the line through it was not proof of failure. It was the place where two truths could finally meet. Descendants. Wicked Wonderland earns a personal rating of 6.2 out of 10. That score reflects a film with stronger ideas than execution. Its Wonderland design is vivid, its best songs serve the characters, and Kylie Cantrall gives Red enough emotional uncertainty to keep the altered timeline meaningful. Liamani Sigura makes Pink a welcome addition rather than a simple franchise expansion, while Malia Baker finds genuine frustration beneath Chloe's polished image. Leonardo Namoso gives Maddox more emotional credibility than the screenplay consistently provides. The central mechanism works. Red and Chloe successfully change the past, but their victory created losses they never saw. Maddox, Max, and Pink prevent the sequel from treating time travel like an easy correction. The story becomes most compelling when it asks whether good intentions remove responsibility for unintended harm. The film falls short because it rarely gives that question enough time. 11 songs, a large supporting team, several family histories, multiple magical challenges, and competing emotional arcs leave the story overcrowded. Chloe's transformation needs more preparation. Maddox's lost relationship with Max deserves more attention. Red and Pink require additional quiet scenes before their reconciliation. Characters such as Robbie, Felix, Hazel, and the Smee brothers often feel more designed than developed. You should watch this if you already enjoy Descendants, especially if the rise of Red left you wanting a more complete consequence to its ending. The music, costumes, Wonderland imagery, and new character combinations provide plenty for a franchise fan to explore. It is also suitable for someone who enjoys energetic family musicals built around identity, friendship, and fairy tale inheritance. You may not connect with it if you prefer tightly structured fantasy, carefully explained time travel rules, or supporting characters who receive complete arcs. Anyone unfamiliar with the rise of Red should watch that first. Wicked Wonderland explains enough to follow the mission, but the emotional foundation depends on remembering what Red and Chloe changed. Streaming is the right way to watch it. The film was created for Disney Channel and Disney Plus, and its pleasures suit an accessible home viewing experience. The visual design benefits from a good screen, but this is not a story that demands a cinema. Owning it would make sense mainly for dedicated Descendants collectors or families expecting repeat musical viewings. A 6.2 does not mean the film lacks value. It means the box contains memorable performances, thoughtful themes, and impressive visual pieces that never fit together as cleanly as they should. With fewer characters and more emotional breathing room, this could have become one of the franchise's strongest entries. Red cannot create a perfect history. What she finally creates is something more honest, a future where two conflicting truths can remain inside the same heart. Every film is a box, and we open this one together. Thank you for staying with me through every compartment of Descendants, Wicked Wonderland. If this breakdown helped you see the divided heart, the altered memories, or Maddox's conflict differently, support the film box by liking the video and subscribing. Now I want your verdict. If you could protect only one timeline, would you keep the kind of world Red created or restore the life Maddox and Max lost? Tell me why in the comments. Every film is a box, and we've only just started opening them. That's the film box. See you in the next one.